Welcome to Falling into 40 with Bailey and Jessica. Welcome back to Falling into 40 with Bailey and Jessica. We are back. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
And yes. How has it been? Summer is winding down. Oh,
It is
I
winding
feel it
down.
slipping away.
And I start to get this overwhelming feeling of just, I don't even know what it is. If it's just like the impending need to have everything done and none of it is an emergency. Everything's okay. I have to keep being rational and telling myself that. And it looks like you are somewhere beautiful and it's a real background, not a virtual whatever green screen, or it's the forest, right?
Yeah, it is a real background. So we decided last week that because we're feeling summer slip away, we needed to get to the mountains. So we are at our small little home away from home in the mountains. And we've been here a couple of days and we plan to stay through the weekend, and we're just enjoying the cooler temperatures, and we've had some things at the house we've needed to take care of and things like that. So, yeah, we've worked, we've hung out, we've relaxed, read books, and just trying to squeeze every little bit we can out of these last few weeks we have left.
Yes, because it's here, ready or not.
It's here. And so last week we talked about some political things, and I feel like it wasn't necessarily giving our opinions, just talking about how important it is to have the facts. And then so many things kind of have happened in just a week's time since that conversation that I think is important to kind of recap and talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just from listening to the news and different stations, and we kind of talked about that too, how different networks give different opinions depending on the side that they lean towards. But what we do know for sure is that former President Trump did have somebody that attempted to assassinate him, and thank the good Lord that was a failed attempt. We do have more information that the head of the Secret Service has now resigned this week, and somebody else has stepped up to take that position. And we also have our president of the United States right now, who was in the race against former President Trump, and he has withdrawn himself from the race, and he has his vice president, Kamala Harris, now taking that spot in the race. And I don't know if it's official until they have the Democratic convention, but we do know we have that, and that's a big deal. And I think tonight, actually, President Biden is supposed to address the nation and fill everybody in on the reasons that he's stepping out of the race. So that's a lot of things, and in a very short time. So I don't know, pretty crazy.
Yes, it's crazy, but it's kind of proof of what we talked about last week, in that you just, from day to day during an election season, you just don't know what to expect next. I think more is to come, and we'll just brace ourselves and pray. That's all we can do, is just turn to the Lord and just pray that the best thing for our country in the state it is right now happens, honestly.
Absolutely. And just continued prayer for no matter who's leading the country, and all those people, men and women, that are making those important decisions, that they do so with taking God into consideration and, what he wants for our country. So that's the main thing, that we just continue to pray, because we're along for the ride here. And again, we need to stay informed, and it's okay to have differing opinions. There's no reason to fight about it. That's why we live in America. Today, we are going to tackle another big concern, and it is surgery on Bailey's ear holes. Not really. Her AirPods just keep
Thought I'd
falling out.
sneak that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about health and kind of just in a very broad sense, like what's going on in America with health, what we can do to be healthier. And it's kind of a hard topic because one, we've got inflation right now and groceries are so expensive. Two, with working moms, working dads, cooking, those kinds of things are hard. Sometimes it's so much easier to do the quick drive through. So there's some different things we want to talk about. Bailey and I didn't really discuss how we were going to talk about it. So I think today will be interesting just to talk about what we think about this topic as a whole. One thing I want to say first, especially after we just kind of came off of talking about the election and what's happening there, is that I think that a lot of people know, but I think a lot of people also don't know that the United States allows some ingredients and some fillers to be placed in our foods that are on the shelves that we buy that are banned by other countries. And this is a problem, in this is my opinion, but it's a problem because why are we allowing these things in our food if other countries are not? And so what I did was try to figure out what some of those things were and the reasoning behind why the other countries have banned them. So that's kind of where I went with it. But I'm going to let you take it for a second, Bailey.
Yeah, I just kind of dove into some statistics that I could find, and this was very eye-opening. It got me thinking about my family and what we do and how we eat, and if this is the case kind of for us as well. But it said currently ultra processed, which is like there's ultra processed, there's processed, and then there's natural whole foods.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I went with it. And it says ultra processed foods make up nearly 60% of what adults eat and 70% of what kids eat. And so I started thinking about how we eat and how our kids eat, and even whenever we're at our max, where with our schedules and things like that, what we're choosing. And it is typically, especially when you're going to a fast food place or some place that you're picking up that's really quick and really easy, that's probably fitting right into that ultra processed category. All of that is cookies, sodas, jarred sauces, cereals, packaged breads, frozen meals, ice cream. Those are all things that we're buying that are ultra processed. They're low in fiber, low in protein, usually high in calories, salt, and added sugar and fat. And something else to note that is another statistic: 4 of the top 6 killers, which is, heart disease, diabetes, those types of things, are related to diet. And so if we think about the things that are, leading to death in our society, it has a lot to do with what we're eating and what we're putting in our bodies.
It is scary. These are all things that we know and we've talked about. But when I really started looking into this, I thought, oh, I've got to make a big change. I have to start cooking. This summer, I have not cooked like I should. But I need to start cooking, and not just cooking the easy stuff, but cooking fresh foods. And I think we've talked about it in one of our episodes before, buying our meat from somewhere that does do a more natural process of butchering and don't put in all the additives and things like that. But I was so disappointed. I don't understand. I mean, it's like everything is about money. and lasting
Mm-hmm.
longer and what's the easiest route. And when I
Mm-hmm.
think of those things, it makes me also think we live in this country where we have all these freedoms. And here we are, we just talked about the political violence. And as we are
Mm-hmm.
both former educators, we also know how hard it is to be a teacher. And everybody has watched the news and or read stories or seen clips of children taking the easy way out, adolescents, teens.
Mm-hmm.
There's a generation coming up that is definitely more of, I feel that it's the easier, the better. And to me, that's what we've done here. We're teaching kids that it's okay to do what's easy instead of doing what's healthy. And children, adolescents, obesity rates, the statistics are completely on the rise. But I think that what scared me was that the FDA utilizes something called the generally recognized as safe approach. And it means that they consider food additives to be safe until shown otherwise. So I don't want to be the guinea pig. I mean, I really don't. It says this approach relies on expert opinions instead of proactive testing of new additives. Alternatively, the European Union will test new food additives to prove they are safe before they can ever hit a grocery store shelf. So, this difference may be a large reason why some food products are available in the US and not abroad. And this is the same in fast food restaurants like McDonald's. Some things aren't
Mm-hmm.
allowed overseas in different countries that are allowed here in ours. That makes me mad. I think it's embarrassing. And whoever's making these decisions needs to, I don't know, do better. This is a big deal. And when I read up on some of these things that are being put in, the number one thing that was on this list is called titanium dioxide. And it's a chemical.
Sounds so yummy.
Yeah, doesn't it? It sounds safe.
Sounds so yummy and healthy.
Yeah. But we usually don't recognize the name if we're looking at a label because it's hidden. And it's
Mm-hmm.
usually companies can get away with just putting artificial color or added color. And this misleads you. But really, you're consuming titanium dioxide without even realizing it. And these are the things that you can find titanium dioxide in. Just prepare yourself. Candy. I love
Mm-hmm.
candy. Chewing gum. I love gum. Sweets.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. I could live off them. Cottage cheese. So people think that they're making a healthy choice. Be sure and read the labels. Cake icing. I could eat that all day. Soups, sauces, alcoholic beverages, and it says many other processed foods. I'm sure the list is too long, but what is really interesting here, it says titanium dioxide is banned in the European Union. There's research connecting titanium dioxide to health effects such as lung cancer. So why are we still allowing that to be put in our foods?
Exactly. And it's in our foods, and it's really easy to say, we'll make a different choice in the grocery store, which I have a whole list of notes on different choices we can make. But the hard part about that is kind of like you started off by saying, inflation, we're seeing it the most in the grocery store. And when families are having difficulty affording things, the things packed with the additives and packed with the things that are so heavily processed are the things that are the off-name brands that aren't healthy options. And the healthy options, they're much more expensive than they were now, and they're harder to find. It's a lot harder to find healthier options as far as substituting your snacks, your breads, your things like that that our kids are putting in their mouths. And so that's the difficulty that I could see happening. And again, like we've said, all this ultra processing, you said, can lead to cancer, health issues, diabetes, but also a lot of studies show that these ultra processed cause inflammation in the body. And so many new studies have come out showing how inflammation, especially like in your gut and things like that, are so detrimental to your health. And so that's something that is really scary too, is all of this causing inflammatory disease.
Is scary. So, Bailey, I have rheumatoid arthritis. And do you want to know how many times I talk to people that have rheumatoid arthritis? Well, guess what? It's an inflammatory disease. And not that there aren't genetic things involved with that, but so many things are worsened by what we put in our bodies. And I think too, a big confusion is if it says organic, then it's safe to
It doesn't
buy.
always mean that.
It doesn't mean that at all. You have to read the label. I thought this was rather interesting as well. Yeah, titanium dioxide. So it is still allowed in Canada and the United States. But in 2023, California took matters into its own hands and they banned Skittles for its use of titanium dioxide and other food additives. So there you go. All of these things are in all the things that I love. I mean, I'm going to have to do like a total overhaul. And I need to anyway. This might just be the push. There's something called brominated vegetable oil. And I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it's used in citrus flavored drinks in the US. It's banned in Japan, the European Union, and the UK. So they use the abbreviation BVO. But the FDA recently proposed a ban on it. But this is because it may affect your thyroid, a gland in your neck that helps regulate your metabolism and other hormones. Already, companies like PepsiCo and others have taken steps to completely remove it from their products. But while it's becoming less common to find it in the drinks today, it's still a good idea to review the nutrition label because it's still in some, as it proposed a ban. It didn't pass the ban. It isn't banned yet. I am happy that there are companies that are going ahead and jumping on that wagon to take that out. But yeah, I mean, I like all the things that are bad for you. You mentioned cereal and those kinds of things a second ago under the ultra processed. And I even have including Kellogg's, Apple Jacks, Jiffy corn muffin mix, frozen foods such as Stouffer's frozen pizza, Bugle's corn chips, Pillsbury. All of these have something called BHA and BHT. And they're banned in Europe. Obviously, they're not banned here. But guess what they are showing the increased risk of when used? Cancer. So guess what I have in my cabinet right now? All kinds of stuff that have. Yes. It's so disappointing. We're going to finish what we have. And then we're going to have to make a clean break because this is scary. You think about how many people you know that have had cancer, that have cancer, that have inflammatory diseases, that have issues with their gut. All of these things, even people that look healthy, that have a good BMI, they're not struggling with anything except they don't feel well. They have an overall sense of blah, just they don't feel well. Well, I wonder why. These are the things that we're eating.
I've looked up a lot of these things are things that my family loves, and I don't know about you, but we are a family of snackers. We're a grazing, grab, and go family. That is what our schedule allows for. So I've been kind of trying to do a lot better with having options and switch outs and things like that. So I had looked up and I found kind of an interesting ways to swap things in your pantry, like easy swaps to make that may not bust your budget, that as you're shopping in the grocery store, maybe making different choices. So we talked about the breakfast cereal and making a swap to still cut oats with honey or adding your own, like creating your own cereal out of different nuts and things like that instead of sodas, which um, I have a few people, I don't really drink sodas, but in my house, we have a few people who really love sodas. The flavored sparkling water is still processed and still contains some additives, but just amping up your water, adding some lime or lemon to it, fresh fruit, things like that, if it's a swap you need to make. White bread, which we've all seen the studies where they put the bread in the bag and see how long it takes to go bad, and some of those breads take a long time and it's very scary. And so it says to make a switch to a more natural bread, and there are some companies that are making a more natural bread now, a sourdough, or making your own bread, which I've looked into, and the process looks scary to me. And it looks very long and crazy.
We're going to put our aprons on and
We're going to make bread.
Yes, we're going to make some bread. We're going to do it live.
And then candy bars. Do you like candy bars? We eat
My
candy
children
bars.
do.
Dark chocolate instead, which I know it's an acquired taste and it's difficult for people to always like. But that's something that, I mean, as close to the real thing as you can get. And then a switch we've recently made was we've started buying from the company called Simple Meals, because we love crackers in our house. Like we're
We do
a
too.
Cheez-It, Wheat Thins, all of those things.
Salt,
Well,
all
the
of them.
Simple Meals brand has a gluten-free option of crackers, and there's an assortment of them, but they use nut flours, so sesame seed flour and things like that. So they taste really good, and I mean, literally, you look on the side of the box and there's 4 ingredients on the list of things that are in the crackers. So that's what we've been buying from, and you can get those at a local grocery store. They are a little bit more expensive, but I've also started using a subscription service called Thrive Market. And you pay a fee like Sam's Club or whatever, but you can choose what they send you, and it's at a more discounted price than in grocery stores. But they have lots of different healthier options. And I usually only buy non-perishables. You can buy perishable things and they'll ship them like cooled in some way, but we live in such a hot climate that scares me a little bit. So I usually have been buying my non-perishable crackers, snack type items through Thrive Market. So we're
I'm
not
writing that
sponsored by
down
them,
right
but
now.
I thought I'd plug them there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and what was the other one you said? Simple.
Simple Mills, Mills. And yeah, it's like snack foods and they have breakfast muffins and different types of things, and it's all very few ingredients in the foods. But those are some things that have been easier swaps that we have made. Now, we're not perfect. We still eat out because I just don't think living in our society and living where we live that it's possible to make a complete switch out unless you have time to fully prep, which I know there's people that take that time, and I probably need to, but
Okay, whatever. We have lives to live. Um,
in reality, it's hard for me to think that I'm gonna prep a bunch of stuff every single week.
well,
It may
yeah.
happen for a little while, but it'll fall
And
off.
I mean, it really does make me mad. It makes me angry. I want to say, why would you allow all these bad things that we've grown accustomed to that have even changed our palates? You know what I'm saying? So if I mean, I can't even imagine if I did like a total overhaul and did this, how skinny my whole family, we would maybe look malnourished until everybody got, you know, it's kind of an acquired taste once you've had all these additives that make things sweeter than we were ever supposed to even have. So maybe having to learn to appreciate things differently. But another thing that I saw, everybody knows the big deal on artificial food dye, and it's in like all the ultra processed foods. It's candy, pasta, pretzels, fruit drinks. It has increased over 5 times since the 1950s. And the concern is what we all know, one, that it may affect behavior in children. And
Yes.
there is one artificial food dye that is known, it's been proven to be able to cross into brain tissue. Well, that's interesting. I mean, there's food colorings contain something called, I think it's benzidine. It's linked to cancer development. Go figure. All of this stuff is not good for you. So here's the deal. I did see there are some grocery stores free of artificial food coloring that won't carry stuff. It says grocery stores free of artificial food coloring include Whole Foods Market, Trader Joe's, and Aldi. I don't know about Aldi.
We have to remember most of those stores are only in larger cities. They're not in the areas that we live in for sure. And so while when we're there, we try to visit those places. It's not something that daily we can take advantage of. So it's like people have got to step up. And I have another question for you.
Okay.
Water. How much do you think the water we drink affects us? Because I went down a water rabbit hole.
I did
And
too.
I've watched some documentaries on water and how water different places and in different countries, kind of like we've talked about with foods as well, so much different than the water we drink, even the bottled water that we're drinking. And some of those things have changed even the water that I buy, which the waters that were the good waters that they said that were healthy for people to buy and drink are much more expensive because they're
in
European
glass bottles.
Yeah, they're European brand waters. And so, yeah, that to me is scary too. It's very difficult to even be able to trust something that keeps us alive, and that's water.
And it's water. And this is extreme. We know that we have to have water. We live in a place where we cannot drink the tap water because the level of arsenic is above the national level that is considered safe. Okay, so let's go down that one for just a second. Let's say I have an RO unit, which we don't anymore because we paid for somebody to come and change the filter, and we just decided we'd go over to plastic bottled water. Well, I started wondering how I wished I had tested the water that we were getting that was considered RO water. I mean, I need Aaron Brockovich out here pronto because if it has these levels, we're bathing in it, we're showering in it. If it's considered unsafe to drink, I think they think that it could be linked to possible higher increases of cancer, and the list goes on. But okay, so I wondered with the RO water, how much did that really filter out? I don't know. I wasn't testing it. So we switch over to plastic. Well, now I'm getting all of everybody knows about the chemicals that come from the plastic that can seep into the water. So I don't know. I read an article that really, what do you do? This also, there's something in aluminum cans that seeps into our drinks. I love sparkling water. I love plain sparkling water. I love flavored. I love it all. I also love diet sodas. And I guess it's one of those things where you have to pick the lesser evil, right? So
Yeah.
which is it? I don't know. I'm assuming it's water. These are the things that I think that we can't worry about it because there's nothing
No.
that we can do about it. But it is concerning, and it makes me want to talk to those that are in charge and say, what the heck? Like, this is absolutely
Yeah.
not okay. The things that you're putting on shelves that we're allowing ourselves and our kids to eat. And, the United States is behind on a lot. Like, it's down the list when it comes to the life expectancy. And I mean, I wasn't super shocked.
I watched a documentary before on blue zones, which are areas where people live to be 100 or older. And most of them, there's areas in Europe, there's areas like down in Costa Rica, but most of them are in places with a freshwater source and in places where it's a little more off the grid. So places where things are more natural that they're eating, and places where they're walking to get to where they're going and things like that. So it's interesting. And again, once you start looking into those types of things, you realize there's not very many of those places in the United States, for
No.
sure.
What have I done to my children?
Mm-hmm.
Food monsters. That's what they are. We're going to make a change, though. Here are some brands that I know a lot of people have heard of Annie's, and they have a brownie mix. They have all kinds of stuff. I think there's pretzels. Yeah. And so that's a good brand to look at. There's a brand called Unreal Snacks. I don't know that one.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Go-Go Squeeze because I've seen little ones in the store holding one of aren't they
Yes.
the green little
Yes.
like
And
apple?
it's natural. There's like 3 ingredients in those too. The Unreal snacks are cool because you can find your average candy bar like an Almond Joy or a Snickers, but they have it in a more natural form. So it's like a dark chocolate with real peanuts with real ingredients in them. So you feel like you're getting a little treat, and they're small, but we've gotten some of the Unreal snacks before, and they're good. And they do make you feel like you're making a better choice.
Well, I'm like at the bottom of the barrel here with food choices. There's a brand called Chomps meat sticks,
Trump's is good.
and then Kind. I've had a Kind bar or two before, and they're good. Kind of like a granola. I don't know what else they make, but I've had a
Mm-hmm.
granola type bar from them. So the bottom line, I think, is if you're wanting to reduce your exposure to these food additives, you're going to have to start looking at labels. And you're not going to be able, just like you said, to be perfect. There's a lot of things we can't get around consuming here. And what you need to look for are food dyes, BHA, and BHT. If those are listed, you shouldn't be buying it. But like I said, we're not perfect and we need things. And dairy products may not show something called RBST directly on the nutrition label, but it must be noted on the product packing in some way. If that's on there, you probably need to look at a different brand of milk. And then back to the titanium dioxide, it's getting trickier to find because companies are trying to mask it under different things. So if it says artificial anything or added coloring, added anything, it's probably not your safest, healthiest bet. We could always reach out if we have questions directly to the food brand for answers. But the real issue here is that all of these food additives are linked to all these things we've talked about: cancer, inflammatory disease. There are even some links to early onset dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that, especially when we're consuming them in high quantities. And Bailey, the United States, is consuming them in high quantities. So it's smart to limit your consumption. It's going to be impossible. Well, I would say it's almost impossible to stop consuming all processed foods. The best thing to do is to understand what the nutrition labels mean and what those ingredients are, and that they're in not just your food, but your drinks as well. And when you have this knowledge, we always say knowledge is power, and it is. It's just taking a little step towards being a healthier version of you. And basically, we want to reduce our exposure to potentially harmful ingredients. And we want to do that for our kids. We want to educate all of our family members. And there are things that we know too, like loading up on vegetables and not canned, fresh.
Yeah.
Fresh vegetables, all those kinds of things that but when you just start looking at all of these things, it just makes you think we need to do better. We need to do better as a country. The FDA needs to do a whole lot better. They need a reprogramming, it sounds like. But with all that said, I'm disappointed. And I think these are things we all know, or maybe knew, but it's where we are.
My rule of thumb is the fewer the ingredients, the better, and ingredients that I know the names of, not a name that I don't recognize unless it's a vitamin of some sort. The fewer the ingredients, the better. And I want to stress what you said, educating our kids, because healthy habits start in the home. And I feel like unhealthy habits in childhood turn into unhealthy habits in adulthood. And so it transfers, it definitely does. And so just making sure we're practicing what we preach as well.
Yes. I think that's absolutely right. And we need to strive for progress, not perfection. Changing our eating habits takes time. And obviously knowledge doesn't come overnight. So just continuing to try to get that knowledge, to educate yourself. And also remember, striving for perfection, especially when it comes to food, usually ends up in a failed goal, because depriving yourself of something to that extent sometimes turns into a complete overeating or overindulgence of the things that are really bad for you. So eating clean, it's a way of life. It's not a diet. And you need to be able to celebrate those good decisions that you're making and realize that slip ups are going to happen. And if you have to have some things in your pantry that have the bad stuff in it, then you do. But at least if we could all just start making some changes. And I also think, Bailey, this is a good chance to say these are questions that we need to voice to the appropriate people and say, hey, what's going on? Why are we doing this? Why is the United States having such a problem with this when, other countries are not? Why is our mortality rate lower? And we can do better. So
I also want to recommend something that I've read. It's been a while since I read it, but this kind of made me think about it. And it really did kind of change my mindset. It's a book called Super Life. And it's called The 5 Simple Fixes That Will Make You Healthy, Fit, and Eternally Awesome. And he goes into detail about even the vegetables that you're choosing to put on your table, which ones are the most beneficial. And at first, I saw him on a documentary I watched, and so that's why I read the book. And he's actually vegan, but he doesn't try
that
to
it's the only
transform you
way.
into
Yeah.
But he does give some pretty helpful tips on what things are like the most beneficial to your health, and it's pretty cool. And so I wanted to kind of recommend Super Life by Darren Olean. And even the way he writes it is pretty laid back. He's kind of a laid back guy. It was eye opening, and it kind of changed even the way I purchased vegetables and the different things that I bought. And it goes into detail about the health benefits within certain things that you're eating. And so if anybody's interested in that, Super Life, that's the book.
I am interested. I just wrote it down. And I think the last thing I have to say, when I started thinking about all of the things that are in my pantry, I think in America, we have come to this point where the more the better. And that's not really a good thing to go by for lots of things. I mean, even when it comes to material things, and too much of anything is not good. Moderation is always key. But
Mm-hmm.
if we have stuff sitting on our shelves that can last forever, then it has all those things that we don't want in our bodies. And the other thing is our portion sizes are too large. So really, we could probably get away with spending the same amount of money on food and eating the healthy amount of food rather than having a bunch of food that is a little bit cheaper but a whole lot more unhealthy.
Yes, I agree with that. And what it boils down to, and we kind of mentioned it earlier, if you're cooking at home and you're controlling where your meat came from, you're controlling where your vegetables came from, and you're cooking it, you're controlling what's going on to it, that's probably going to be ultimately the best you can do for your family as far as the dinner table goes and what your main meals are. My biggest thing was we're snackers. And so figuring out healthier options to pull out of the cabinet when you're just wanting to graze or you're limited with time and you just have to grab something quickly. But as far as meals are concerned, the best thing you can do is cook it at home because you don't know when you're going to a fast food restaurant where they got their meat, where they got their vegetables, where they got anything that they're putting into your bag to take home to eat.
And maybe for all restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do better. And it won't be perfect. And I will still have lots of things that we shouldn't have in our pantry, but I am going to start making some changes around here because it's time. And I do want my
Yep.
children to know what these things can do to their bodies, and every little good decision in when it comes to eating and food choices will definitely make a difference. So,
For sure.
well, I think that's it for today's episode. If you are running into 40, falling into 40, if you've skipped 40 and you're way past it, if you're not even close to 40, we don't care. We want you here. We love you. We thank you for listening. And we hope that you have the very best time looking up all of these places to find some groceries. Just kidding. We hope that you know that we love you no matter what food you buy. We just want to educate ourselves and just get the word out there on things that we think can help you and us.
Yes, we're so grateful. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in with us on today's episode of Falling into 40. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.